Welcome to my ShinyGizmo top features tutorial. I'm gonna present the features from version 0.4.1, which is available on GitHub, but you can also install it from CRAN. I will show the features while improving the simple Shiny application, so let's run it. As you can see, it's a simple survey that gathers feedback from ShinyConf. So you should provide your name, you can provide the overall rating. After we fill in these two, the submit button shows up and you can send your feedback, but more to that, you can also select your favorite topics. You can choose your favorite talks for each day. This is using VS checkboxInput controller from ShinyGizmo, especially useful if you have to allow to provide the user multiple answers in groups, but still keep some minimalism in your application. What's more, we have additional comment as a modal, and after we click submit, the feedback message shows up. Let's check how this is solved in the Shiny application. So for the input controllers, we're using text inputs, radio buttons, checkbox group input, VS checkbox input from ShinyGizmo, action button for opening modal, modal itself implemented in the opened in the server, and submit button wrapped into conditionalPanel. So as a condition, we require to provide name and rating, and then the action button shows up, so the submit button. What's more, we're using two additional conditional panels, one for wrapping the whole survey content here, and whenever the submit button is not clicked, we display it. And when the submit button is clicked, so its value is more than 0, then we just display the thank you message. And for saving the feedbacks, we are just printing them to the console, but we do it while converting the input to the list and select the needed input values. Yeah, so name, rating, 5 topics, 5 talks, and comment. The first feature I want to show you is especially useful if you have Shiny application with large number of input controllers. Let's check the example. Here we've got 4 input controllers. Let's fill in it with some values. And we want to store all the inputs in the single list like here. Yeah. So in order to do so, we just convert the input object to the list and subset it with the provided input IDs. But imagine having not 4 but 50 such inputs, then it may complicate a little bit. With ShinyGizmo, you can solve it much quicker. It offers the commonInput function, which you use to wrap the input controller. So the first argument is the common ID you're gonna use to store the value. You have also the alternative, the commonInputs, to wrap multiple inputs together. So for example, here we wrap the 3 radio buttons. And then instead of accessing each value separately, you can just access it with the single input named with the ID provided for common inputs. Yeah, let's try it in action. Okay, and yeah, we've got the same result over here. Pretty simple, isn't it? So as of the additional arguments, we've got the block argument, which defines whether the wrapped value should be accessible to the server or not. So by default, we don't send the single inputs to the server. For example, while observing the name, we won't be able to observe the value. Yeah, over here. No printing. Let's unblock them. Yeah, and the change of the value is observed independently. So the case may complicate much more if we have dynamic number of input controllers. Let's check the example. Here we define the ID and the type. Yeah, and in this case, if you want to store the inputs in a single list, we need to do some additional actions in the server. The first thing, we need to store the IDs in a reactive value, and then use the reactive value while subsetting the input object. With commonInput, you get it for free. Just wrap the input controller with commonInput every time you just render it, and then you just access the values with the same approach as before, with a single value. Well, let's try it in action. Yeah, as you can see, it works fine. Pretty useful, isn't it? Yeah, and with that we can come back to our survey and apply the approach. So each input controller is now wrapped with the common input, so text input, radio buttons the same way, checkbox group input, VS checkbox input, and even the text area input within a modal. Let's run it. Let's provide some values. And as we can see, the results are stored over here. Now let me show you one common issue while using standard Shiny models you've probably met before. So let's run the application. Let's try to provide some comment over here. Close it, and then let's try to edit it. What happened? The content of the model was cleared out. This is because the content of the model is rendered from scratch in the server every time you open it. So the initial value of text area input is empty. We can solve this issue pretty easily in this case by providing its server value. Yeah, using input object. Let's run it. Provide some comment here, close it, open again, and yeah, voila, it works. But this solution works pretty fine only when we have the static content of the model. Imagine having here the dynamic content. We would have to put much more work to restore the state of the model. Now let me show you how ShinyGizmo solves the issue. It offers the function modalDialogUI you should put in the application UI part. Yeah, it's the same as the standard modalDialog, but has two additional arguments: the ID, modal ID, and the button responsible for opening the modal. Here we place the modalButtonUI function with the same ID as the ID of the model. Yeah, let's try it. Open the model, provide some text, close it, open again. Yeah, and the state was saved. You can, more to that, you can put the modalButtonUI anywhere in the application you want. So for example, over here, we define the modalDialog in the UI in this part, above the HR, and below it, we place the modalButtonUI with the same ID as the modal ID. And here, we disable the button with providing its value as null. After we run it, yeah, the content of the modal should be somewhere here above this line, and the button is over here. So when you click it, you can put some value, dismiss it, open again, yeah, and the save state is saved. So now we can use this approach to simplify our survey. So let's open it. We can see the part responsible for rendering and opening the modal in the server was totally removed, and instead we've placed the modalDialogUI in the survey content, yeah, with providing proper button and footer, and of course the content of the modal. Yeah, let's check it now. Provide some comment, close it, and try to edit again, and works great. Now it's time for another great feature provided by ShinyGizmo package, and it's named valueButton. valueButton renders a button in a Shiny application and allows you to take any attribute from the application browser and send it to the server. So let's see it in action. Yep, we've got attribute width of the text area. Let's change the width then and try to update it. Yep, we've got it. attribute value of the slider. It also works, and even the height of the window. Yeah. So as we can see, it was updated as well. So this is a very cool feature that allows you to access everything you've got in your browser. And how does it work? So you use the valueButton function. As a first argument, you provide the input ID. With this ID, you can access then the value in the server, some label, and the argument selector, which allows you to point to the specific element in the browser, like by ID of the element. You can also use some specific ones like the window or document in order to access the browser data or the application data. And then you provide the attribute. So based on the element you've chosen, you can access its attributes. So like the style, value, some inner height from window, and so on. So what was the reason I've decided to implement such feature? The reason was usage of text area input. I used to put like a quite large amount of text within the input and update it. And the thing was that the application became pretty slow because every time I've changed even one letter of the text, the large value was sent to the server. So it was slowing down the application a lot. And now I needed the solution to provide the text into the text area and only source it when I need it. So whenever I click, for example, the button. Such behavior you can observe in the following example. So let's run it. You can see we've got the text area input here, provide some value, and every time we update it, even with one letter, it's sent to the server again. Same happens, it may be surprising, with the text area tag with provided ID attribute. Shiny automatically converts it to text area input, so that's why it sends the value to the server every time we update it. So the solution that I came with was to have the text area with ID provided stored as a data ID attribute. So now it's not automatically bound as a Shiny binding, Shiny text area input. We can provide here a lot of text. Yeah, it's not sent to the server, and then take it only when we need it. Yeah, so with the value button. Yep, and in order to make this workflow easier, ShinyGizmo offers the helpful function named text area. It just creates the text area tag, but it's already pre-styled, and it stores its input ID as a data ID attribute. This is why you can easily access it with data ID selector using valueButton. So let's check this in action. We provide some text here, and only take it whenever we want with valueButton. So now we can apply this approach to slightly improve our modal used in the survey. So what we can do here is to create the text area, modify the text area input with usage of text area. We store some comment over here, and as a closing button for the modalDialog, we put the valueButton and wrap it into the commonInput. This is because valueButton now stores the content of the comment, as we can see here. So with this simple approach, you can optimize your Shiny application if you expect the user to put lots of text in the text input. Again, it was great. And we close it. In order to present it, we also need to allow to submit the survey, and we can see we got the comment stored properly. And now it's time for the last feature I wanted to present. It's named conditionalJS. ConditionalJS is an extension for well-known conditionalPanel. It works similar to the conditionalPanel. You provide some UI content as a first argument, for example, the button, some divs, or input controller. You provide the condition. So this is the JavaScript expression that should be evaluated to true or false. It can use the input values or some general JavaScript code. And one difference comparing to the conditional panel is the JS call argument. It allows you to provide more methods to be evaluated when the condition is true or false. And the methods that the ShinyGizmo provides are the show and hide, disabling element or enabling. So for example, we can disable the button. We can attach some CSS class to the element, provide some CSS rules to the element, or even animate the visibility or invisibility of the element. So let's check this in action. Okay, so let's change the value of the slider. If the value is 2 and the first button is visible, if it's less than 2, it still disappears. Yeah? When we have value at least 3, then we disable this button. For value 4, we assign the boldme class to this element, which is styled to bolded the text within the button. When value is at least 5, we change the CSS attribute for the border, and it's dashed styled. For value at least 6, we show the element, the button with the animation. Yeah, we can see it, show and hide. Yeah, again, we change some CSS attributes for the next button. When the value is at least 7, it becomes red. Then we disable the next button constantly when the value is at least 8. We can also do it. Yeah, it's always disabled now. And we can run some animation for the button whenever value is above 9. Yeah, at least 9. So if I may say something more about this JS calls, it always stores 2 elements. As we can see, for example, for show, it stores 2 values, value named true and value named false. And with this, in each element, we store some JavaScript code that should be run on the element using this selector when the condition is true or false. We can skip, for example, the false element in order to not run any action when the condition is false. Yeah. What we can do more is to provide our custom action. So for example, with the helper run animation, we can run the animation on the element itself when the condition is true, but we can also provide some additional action when the condition is false. Yeah, so this is how it works, and what we can achieve with such function in terms of our survey. So we've had the one question that allowed the user to choose maximum 2 options, and before we didn't have a control over it. We could choose 2 and then allow the user still to provide more options. With conditionalJS and writing the proper condition that is visible here and JS call, we could easily achieve it. So this allows us to provide much more options for the user experience and for the control over the application. And now let's quickly check how can we improve our survey with usage of conditionalJS. So now the content of the survey will disappear whenever the submit button is clicked, but will disappear with animation. Same for the thank you message. It will show up with the animation and some delay when the button is clicked. The button itself will be initially disabled and enabled when both name and rating is provided. What's more, the checkbox group input that is limited for maximum 2 options will be indeed limited. Yeah? So we will not allow the user to provide more than 2 values over here. Now let's check this in action. Now we can see the submit button is disabled. Let's provide the 2 first answers. Yeah, it's enabled again. Now let's provide here some values, and yeah, we can see it's disabled when the already 2 answers are here. And then let's submit it. Yeah, we can see the beautiful animation. So this is the final result. Yeah, thank you for being here, for listening to my tutorial. I hope you liked it. And if you have any more questions, you can reach me via GitHub or email. I will answer for sure and help you. Thank you.